Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Reid. I'm the editor and publisher of the Edison Report. Today, I have the honor of once again moderating the annual lighting forum sponsored by the National Lighting Bureau and co-sponsored by the Edison Report and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW, which so graciously lends us its production facilities and personnel to help make this event so special every year. The panel I'm about to convene will discuss protocols for wired and wireless systems. Our two panelists are well-known experts in the field. Jim Yorgey, a past chair of the National Lighting Bureau, formerly Technical Applications Manager at Lutron Electronics and now a consultant in the field, and Doyle Young, the North American Sales Manager for Casambi Technologies. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jim, the first question is to you. What are the primary protocols for wired technology used today, and what are their pros and cons?
Certainly wired protocols are what we've been dealing with for many, many years, literally since the 60s when the first electronic controls and dimmers were developed. They include two primary types, which are analog and digital, and we have a slide which will show these protocols. The analog protocols that were common are the dimming protocols of what we refer to as forward and reverse phase control dimming that we find in every dimmer in households, through the years. That's what we've been using. And then the other analog protocol today that's very popular is 0 to 10 volt control, which is a low voltage signal that provides the dimming control of fixtures. In the digital protocol side, the protocols that were most used today are Doyle, which stands for Digital Addressable Lighting Interface, and the newer version of that, Doyle 2.0, and then DMX, which is came from the theatrical world and is a digital, or DMX 512 we call it, which is another digital protocol widely used today. The other protocol is using the Ethernet and using power over Ethernet, or PoE, which is an emerging technology and protocol. The advantages alongside, there are literally millions of dimmers in homes and in buildings and restaurants and commercial facilities that use that protocol. So it's a very common protocol and essentially very low cost. 0 to 10 is more and more widely used in this country because I can buy a fixture today and typically it comes with that control standard as a standard in the fixture, so it doesn't add cost to the fixture anymore with an LED fixture. However, there are disadvantages certainly to those analog protocols, and that the digital protocols of Doyle and DMX are becoming more widely used. Actually, in Europe, Doyle has really supplanted 0 to 10 as the most common wired protocol.
Well, Doyle, and you said Doyle 2.0 now.
Right.
It never has really taken off in the U.S. Is that fair to say?
It has been taking off slower in the U.S. than in Europe. And I think that's not uncommon in the lighting industry. If you look at the history of the conversion from T12 lamps to T8, Europe did it very quickly in a matter of 10 years. Took the U.S. 20 years to make that conversion. I think it's a bigger ship that's sailing in the U.S., so it takes us longer to adopt these things. But I think again that some of the new reasons we're using lighting today will allow Doyle to become more dominant.
And I also think higher energy rates in Europe give them more of an incentive to adopt the more energy-saving technologies. Doyle, how important is it for customers with interoperability when choosing wireless lighting controls?
I think that it's very important. Not only important, it's expected. I think that the way that technology is moving, everybody expects everything to work with everything else. So your phone wants to work with your car. You want your put a note on your iPad and it come up on your laptop. So I think that there's an expectation that your lighting control will work the same way.
Okay. What limitations exist when it comes to wireless lighting controls?
I think there's two ways to answer that question. The first would be the actual physical limitations. When you're dealing with radio frequencies, you have to think about what's around it. So you have to think about the application. For example, if you go to South Florida, they build a lot of things with concrete because of the hurricanes. Well, radio frequencies die in concrete. Then you think about the trend of putting the control in the fixture. Well, now you have a metal encased radio and it's just going to bounce around and it's not going to be able to connect with anything. The other limitation, I think, is that the technology is moving so quickly that you can't keep everybody up to speed. So a lot of it is just people need to be educated to know what it can do and what it can't do. So for example, I was reading an article, it was from last year in August, and it was talking about Bluetooth specifically, and the things that they were saying wasn't true last year and still doesn't hold true. They were still a couple years behind. So it's just everybody trying to catch up with the technology because every day it's moving so quickly.
So you mentioned Bluetooth. What's your opinion of Bluetooth mesh?
I think it's excellent. I think that it's the future of lighting control. It's very easy and it's very accessible. And I think that there's a paradigm shift when it comes to controls, that it's no longer a big case in the back of a building. It's now something that in your hands and it's dynamic, like the places that we're in.
Okay. And Lutron is adding Bluetooth and Bluetooth mesh. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think, and certainly those are the future for wireless controls. However, in general, wired and wireless controls will both survive long term because there are applications where you just can't use wireless. In government, military applications, Lutron even provides drivers that, although most drivers today, to configure them, you use near-field communication, which is wireless technology. But it's still needed to have drivers for the government that don't use that technology because they want absolutely no wireless. And so the drivers have to use a hardwired method for their configuration.
It's interesting. How old is Lutron?
Lutron was started in 1961, so it's been around for a little while.
Okay, and has always adapted to whatever the changes occur.
Right, it's using the technologies that make the most sense, whether it's the wired or the wireless.
What standards are being developed now to improve wired or wireless controls?
That's a good question because even in the analog world of 0 to 10, there is a new standard being developed, and part of the ANSI NEMA C137, I believe, that is tightening the criteria and standard for 0 to 10. Although there's been an IEC standard for 0 to 10 for many years, they're providing a more tight standard that allows conformance so that 0 to 10 becomes even more standardized. Right now, there are sort of many varieties of 0 to 10, and this will allow the industry to have a tighter performance standard.
To you, Doyle, will wireless solutions in the future become less about illumination, do you think, and more about data harvesting, data collecting?
Well, I think that the trend is to go towards whatever the consumers want, and luckily that there's kind of two different consumer bases, I think, in lighting. I think that there's a base that wants that data. They want to be able to quantify, whether it be sensors with humidity, whether it be foot traffic, heat mapping. So data is definitely going to be a big part of it. But also with all of the technology that's advancing with actual LEDs, I think there's going to be, from the architectural community, a call to have the lighting controls kind of mirror that and grow with that as well. Because I think that we can't forget that the LEDs themselves are still growing, and that's still kind of in its infancy, if you will. So I think that lighting control will follow that towards the better lighting control and tighter lighting controls. So.
Earlier you mentioned about Bluetooth mesh and how you think it will really kind of usher in this IoT. Why do you feel so strong about that?
I think that Bluetooth mesh is the full package. So initially it's based off Bluetooth low energy. So right there, it takes a lot less energy. It's very accessible. Again, people want to be able to control their environments and the ambiances around them. This gives everybody the ability to do that because Bluetooth is in every phone, every smart device now.
So is it too accessible? Because I have it in my phone, maybe now I can hack into a system.
Well, that's actually something that scares a lot of people away, but there's a lot going into security measures with Bluetooth, and it's actually a lot more secure than people realize. A lot of the times when you have a wireless network that's especially Bluetooth going back into a building access control, a lot of the times if they get into the Bluetooth, that's as far as they can go. They can just dim the lights. They're not getting anything to the sensitive IT material. So, okay. But going back to ushering IoT, Bluetooth is also very economical. And at the end of the day, controls come as a line item on a budget. So it has to go by the P&L. Right. So Bluetooth is the way to do that. So if people can afford it, then people will buy it, and then the technology is going to push forward that IoT capabilities. We already have the ability to do asset tracking. We already have the ability to do iBeacons. So iBeacons give you the opportunity to even monetize your existing lighting. For example, there's a city that is looking to use iBeacons on their outdoor lighting. And basically what they want to do is they want to have self-guided tours of the city, and each light will have an iBeacon, and it can give information about the city. They can sell ad space on these iBeacon things that come to the app, and now they have something that's generating money for the city, and they're already using the lighting, so it's a win-win. Wow.
And the advertising will help pay for the system.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, Jim, you said Lutron started in '61, and you've probably been with them almost since the beginning. So where do you see lighting controls, given your history, your long history in this industry?
I think today there's a lot of excitement about lighting controls, and it's now become far more ubiquitous in the industry. All the major manufacturers are involved in controls, and again, building it into their fixture products, not as necessarily a separate line item anymore. Whether it's a wireless device in the fixture or a fixture that comes automatically with wired protocols, it's something that, because of the interest in circadian lighting and particularly human-centric lighting, where I really need the ability to have more control in that fixture beyond the data collecting aspects. I have something that's from a controls perspective very exciting, and to Doyle's point of we use our phones and tablets and things to control the lighting, making it easier, making it lower cost. So the cost aspect anymore isn't as great as it used to be. So that's no longer the disadvantage, and the whole energy thing is still very important. As we go toward net zero buildings and that aspect, I'm going to need control of anything that consumes energy in the building, and lighting controls is a big part of that.
But let's talk about that cost factor, because I do hear some pushback, even with the advent of solid state lighting, and some distributors and even contractors will tell me on a retrofit, they'll say, look, we're going to save now 75 or 80% just by going with LED, taking out our 460 watt high bays and putting in a 120 watt system. Why do I need to save another 5 or 10% with dimming, given the cost of the additional controls? And I'm hearing pushback that some people won't use controls because they think they're already saving so much. Right.
Well, one thing is it's mandated. So it's not an issue of do I want to or don't I want to. I have to use controls to meet energy codes. Title 24, the ASHRAE codes, the IECC codes that all the states are adopting, and they sort of race with each other to adopt the latest and greatest code. And so I have to use controls, and those energy codes are getting stricter and stricter, where it's not just I got to turn things on and off. Right. I now need to have multiple levels, dimming levels as part of that daylight control, for instance. And that all leads to, again, making the entire building energy efficient.
Do you concur?
Yes, I definitely concur. There's also a lot more that goes into it that actually isn't maybe caught in the whole dollars and cents line items. There's been studies about productivity, and that's money in the bank, and that's something that you're not going to see by doing any calculations with kilowatt hours. Additionally, you have basically energy management now that works for you when you come to daylighting. So now you have the lights fluctuating based on what's happening outside, keeping a consistent task lighting, making sure that the people can see, and yet you don't have to worry about what the lighting's doing. It's going to go down when it needs to. It's going to come up when it needs to. So I think that's something that, you know, over time it really pays back quickly.
Jim?
There's another aspect to going to digital controls, wired or wireless, and that is we're creating kind of a new industry, not just us, but the HVAC people as well, and that's commissioning. Now there's commissioning required on projects, and commissioning isn't just the starting up of equipment. It actually begins at the design process where a commissioning agent, which is a kind of a new category a person, will come and work with the design team, making sure things are being designed correctly, and then make sure the building gets commissioned properly, and lighting is a big part of that. And that's important because now as we're going digital, every fixture is individually addressable. That's adding more time and effort to that commissioning process, and that time and effort obviously costs money. And of course the commissioning agent helps get the building working properly, both at the point of getting a certificate of occupancy and beyond, you know, once the building is up and running, you know, post-commissioning, that sort of thing. The element I mentioned about the time, it takes more time to commission the lighting system, that's being addressed with going with Bluetooth mesh type technologies and even in the Dolly protocol, the ability to do more self-commissioning, that the system becomes more intelligent of doing a lot of itself, that commissioning effort on the lighting side will continue to decrease.
Right, but one point, if I may, you talk about kind of the jobs being created, this commissioning job. Who pays that? The manufacturer, the end user, the lighting designer? Who pays for them?
Certainly that comes out of the construction budget, right? But it leads to an improvement in the building operating, because now my building actually is going to work right. And some of the complaints we've heard in the past that, well, my lighting system doesn't work, I don't use it because I don't know how, etc.
So it pays for itself.
Yeah, it ultimately, for the end user and the building owner, it pays for itself.
Please.
Another thing to that point when it comes to the commissioning, where we're seeing a lot of companies now going towards lighting control on board the fixtures, the commissioning comes very important as to who does it. And I think that it's going to change kind of a paradigm in the way the industry is set up by who brings the value. Is it going to be from the rep side of the channel? Is it going to be from the distributor? Is it going to change in every market? We need to figure out, or as Jim pointed out, is it going to be this third party of integrators that kind of takes the mantle on doing that? So I think it's going to be very interesting to see within the next maybe 2-3 years how that shapes out.
Jim made a comment about with Bluetooth mesh and more self-commissioning. Do you agree with that the end user can do his own commissioning with Bluetooth mesh more so than he can with other protocols?
Yes, I do, but obviously there comes a limit to how deep they want to go into commissioning or how deep their needs are. A unique thing I think about the Bluetooth mesh systems is the way they're set up is that you can have something as easy as setting a timer, set it and forget it, or you can get into much more deeper, you know, open loop and closed loop daylighting, or control hierarchies, or scenes that, you know, dynamic scenes throughout the day. So I think that depending on what they want and the size and scope, I think that there is jobs that you could just teach the end user, and I think there's jobs where we're going to need the commissioning agents. So. Okay.
And then Jim, I want to go back. Earlier in the conversation, we talked about PoE. What are the real benefits to the end user of using PoE?
I think PoE is a fairly new avenue for lighting controls, and you know there's projects out there that are beginning to tell us what can be done with PoE. If a project is very IoT or IP centric, IT centric, I guess I should say, internet technology centric, then having people that can provide the programming capability via the network, you know, I have that ability to do that. What it does is eliminates the need for power wiring to the fixture. The power comes obviously, hence its name, power over Ethernet, to the fixture. So I can make it part of my network system as opposed to my general electrical system. And that's where, you know, it's a matter of who will then, you know, do the installation.
Well, but so is there really a benefit in labor? Because I was told when it was first being discussed, well, yeah, now you don't need an electrical contractor. Anybody can run the Cat 5 labor. Anybody can run the Cat 5 wire. But you still have a person running wire.
Right,
right?
And for instance, in DC, for instance, not anybody can run a low voltage wire. That's a different class of installer, okay. In buildings here, in fact, a building where down the street here, they have an electrical contractor and they have a low voltage contractor. They both are on the project running their respective cables. Oftentimes,
and low voltage guy is cheaper, I assume, less expensive.
I couldn't tell you for sure if that's the case, but basically you need the two different disciplines by licensing. The thing is, many electrical contractors are in that business as well. So you're starting to see that where electrical contractor can do both, and there's advantages to that. On any construction project, you have a coordination concern in terms, particularly above the ceiling, because I've got sprinklers, I've got speakers, I've got you know, white noise generators, I've got you know, HVAC ducts. So if the electrical contractor is doing both the low voltage and line voltage, that's one less coordination effort in the ceiling.
So we focus this conversation really mainly on kind of commercial, industrial. What about residential? What's going on with controls in residential?
Yeah, residential too is going in the world of both wireless and wired systems, and as LEDs have dominated the residential world, of course there's been a learning curve there of getting LEDs that are compatible with the existing analog dimmers and controls and also the digital controls, but that's, you know, we're starting to see that happening very successfully, and providing the light, the nice warm dimming and things like that that people want. And even the color tuning aspects of lighting are becoming something popular in residential. And that's where certainly in renovation, you know, a lot of the buildings today are the buildings we're going to have in 2030. You know, like 85% of the buildings in 2030 are here today. So, and that's whether it's commercial or residential.
And that really limits POE, because people aren't going to go in and retrofit with POE. Is that fair to say?
I think that's where you'll see more of the wireless and retrofit. Wireless really has its advantage in retrofit applications.
Right. Doyle, closing comments?
Just to kind of piggyback on residential, I think Wi-Fi is definitely a great thing for residential, because it almost becomes like an entertainment. It almost becomes something that's...
Oh, you said Wi-Fi or Li-Fi?
Wi-Fi.
Okay.
I mean, because everybody has the Wi-Fi, and they're just doing so many cool things with the if this, then that. So if your favorite team, say the Capitals, you know, they score a goal, you can have all your lights go to red or something like that. So I mean, there's just really cool things that maybe aren't so much commercially based. They're just doing a lot of cool things with that. So I think that, and as easy as it is, I think things like Wi-Fi are going to be big in residential moving forward.
Closing comment?
Yeah, I think providing the right protocol for the application, whether it's wired or wireless, both areas are expanding and growing. The one certainly issue that has to be addressed is software, and software is quickly changing to make it easier and easier to allow things like you talk about on the residential side, and it's getting there, I guess, is the one word to use. That when I use the right control protocol and I have the right software, I'm going to have an easy to use and very functional system.
Okay. Well, men, thank you.